Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome to Threads Day! I know, it's very exciting. On Threads Day, I read books and I judge them. I believe I'm bringing back that old motto. Today we are going to be talking about the book, The Girl Who Could Fly. The way I got this book is actually a really funny story. One day, a friend that I hadn't spoken to in a while gave me a message on Facebook. She asked if it would be weird if she got my address from me, which of course I was not opposed to, but I never really gave it much thought after that. This treasure appeared on my doorstep and I was initially very confused because I had not connected the dots at all that this Facebook message that I got from my friend asking for my address had anything to do with a mystery book that I received in the mail. Initially, I was convinced that I bought this book in my sleep, but I checked my Amazon purchases and nope, this was very much not from my Amazon reading list. Guys, I thought this book literally came from nowhere until randomly I had a light bulb moment like, oh, maybe it was my friend who gave me the book. And sure enough, she confirmed it and it was. So of course I was extremely excited to start reading it. I feel like books are just so much more magical when they are given as gifts. I will never deny a book as a gift. Even if I don't like the book, you'll just probably end up on here with a bad review. Don't worry, I'm pretty nice with my reviews. Big shout out to her and always being super supportive of my YouTube channel, watching all of my stuff, sharing all of it. You the best. Without further ado, let's get started. Before I jump in with my initial thoughts, I want to make sure that the people watching this are able to keep track of how exactly I'm going to judge this book. I have a little bit of a timeline. I am going to act like a beta reader while reading this book. And I am going to use some of the questions that Bethany Vota actually used for her questions that she uses to her beta readers. So you can totally check out that video right here. I am going to be separating it into sections. The first chapter, the first 3 chapters, third of the way through the book, halfway through the book, the climax, and of course the overall ending. In each of these sections, I am going to be answering the following questions. Number 1, what were your initial thoughts? Number 2, what did you like or not like about it? Number 3, what was your favorite part? Number 4, if you could change one thing about it, what would it be? Number 5, what did you think of the ending? And number 6, do you have any other additional thoughts? Now, I already read this book before I came up with this system, so I may be flipping through the book and seeing just at what certain part would be the next 3 chapters or halfway, etc., etc. And I am going to do my very best of giving very little spoilers. I really did enjoy this book. That's going to be a spoiler alert for, I guess, the very ending. So I want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to read this too. If you guys don't know what it is, there's that. And the author is Victoria Forrester. The Girl Who Could Fly, Victoria Forrester. Let's get into it. Okay, so my first initial thoughts with chapter 1 was, this is gonna be an odd book. You know those books that are just a little bit quirky and are a little bit interesting, especially with the way that the dialogue is written and the way that there are descriptions used in the book, which I actually was really excited about and I truly like. One of my very favorite books has this style of writing, so I wasn't opposed to any of it. That was just one of my initial thoughts. I liked that we immediately liked and wanted to root for the main character. It wasn't really a saving the cat moment, but I don't think that she needed one because her personality was so cute. Obviously, she's a child, she's asking a lot of questions, which shows that she's very curious, which leads to her discovering that she can fly, which I feel like is not a spoiler because it obviously says it in the title. My favorite part, I'm not sure if I could choose a favorite part. I just kind of liked it overall, just the quirkiness of all of it and the fun personality that Piper McCloud has, who is the main character. If I could change one thing, I think that I would focus less on the background of Ma and Pa. Not to say that Ma and Pa aren't interesting. Well, honestly, they're actually not that interesting of people, which is why it makes it interesting that Piper is a lot more unique than her parents. But I feel like there could have been a little less background on them. Once again, that's kind of a trait of a quirky writing world. It adds in a lot of details that maybe aren't necessary, but give it a little bit of fluff. The ending was pretty good. Actually, something else that I didn't mention is it kind of goes backwards. So basically, Piper McCloud is in a situation where she's basically gonna jump and figure out if she can really fly. And that's the very beginning of the chapter. So it reels you in, but then it says, oh, let's go back and explain where Piper came from, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then it connects to the end. So the beginning and the end are very similar. I don't know if that's the way that I would have written it, but I don't dislike it. My other thoughts is I feel like it gave enough of a hook that you would want to keep on reading more. Like, why is it important that she could fly? All right, and now we are on to chapter 3. The reason why I added in this section is because usually you give 3 chapters to the publishers initially when they are deciding, hey, maybe we want to publish your book, we don't know, but give us the manuscript of the very beginning. 3 chapters is where you are really supposed to be hooked in. And honestly, a lot happens in chapter 3. I feel like the author really sped up that process. The publishers and perhaps the readers would be interested. My initial thoughts were, wow, a lot happened. I think that the author did a really good job making all of the kids in her town seem so terrible. Honestly, everyone in the town just seems super awful, which I think was on purpose, definitely, because Piper McCloud has never seen the rest of the town, obviously because of her talents and gifts that her parents kind of try to hide from the town. And I think that really goes to show how uneducated Piper is about talking to people. Not to say that she is bad at talking to people or she's afraid of doing it, she just doesn't really know tact, which I think was interesting and introspective of how she has been kept hidden all of her life. My favorite part was when Piper just shows those kids up. She totally just I feel like she gets her moment. She gets her moment where she was like, ha, you all suck, I'm cool, even though she ended up getting in trouble for it from her parents. I don't know if I actually would change anything about this. I remember the 3rd chapter pretty distinctly, but let me go back to the 2nd and see what's going on here. Okay, basically the bulk of it was kind of an extension of chapter 1. Maybe I would ease into the exciting hook a little bit more. I feel like she really rushed it in chapter 3, but once again, the call to action usually does happen very quickly, so I'm not sure. I'm contemplating that one. The ending was perfect. I feel like the ending hooked us in. Finally, something really big happened. And this is the part where we're like, oh my gosh, what happens next? Anything could happen at this point because she has made basically a scene. So at this point in the story, Piper is no longer in her original home. She has been taken someplace else because of the gifts that she has. Initial thoughts, I was honestly a little bit surprised that Piper kind of ended up in the same situation, being the outcast as she was in her own town, which I kind of thought was interesting. I don't really understand why people think that children are just horrible people and they just like to pick on people who are different than them. Granted, there are always children that are going to be like that, but I feel like she didn't put into account that other kids might be excited that there's someone. There was one girl that was hanging out with her, but she did not last very long. I really am over this trope of kids picking on other kids to see if they can handle it. I really don't think kids maliciously think like that all the time. My favorite part was once again when Piper shows the kids that she belongs there. There is a portion where there is a younger girl who also has powers, tries to manipulate her drinks and her food, and she shows them up hardcore. Even though Piper McCloud is a very loving, sweet girl, she's got a little bit of sass and attitude. And I think that people underestimate her a lot because obviously she is from the Midwest. She has that stereotype of not very educated because she didn't go to school, worked on the farm all of her life. If I could change anything, I think that I would have more kids that just weren't interested in her. I feel like most of the kids in here really want to give her a hard time for no apparent reason, just because she's new there. So I think that it would be good to have some bystanders, and then of course some kids that are standing up for her, because there are kids that really like to be that hero, even if maybe it has nothing to do with them. It's in a weird spot, so technically I can't say how did I like the ending, because it's not really an ending, it's in the middle of the book. So I'm gonna skip that one. It is very interesting how, now that I'm looking at it in hindsight, of how the author does a really good job masking who the real antagonist is, because initially when you get to the third of the way in the book, you think you know who the antagonist is. Let's move on to halfway. Okay, we get halfway through and Piper notices there's stuff going on here that's a little slim shady. In this portion, I think that my initial thoughts were surprised but not surprised. It kind of seemed too good to be true, the situation that she was in. So at this point, I was thinking there needs to be an outside force that is going to come in and wreck her perfect world, or she's gonna have to realize her world isn't perfect, which is what happened. Especially with one of the characters that Piper really trusts. This is where you really understand who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. And I love the way that she was led to this point, because one of the characters that you think totally bad keeps on picking on her, all of a sudden is the reason why she figures out the truth about this place. I guess that kind of ties into like what I liked about it. It definitely gives you twists and turns that you were expecting but not expecting at the same time. It makes sense that they happened, but there's really not a way that you could like guess everything. It's interesting because my favorite part is actually a little bit past halfway. It's about 10 pages past the halfway point when she is finally confronted by the person that she thinks is the true antagonist, and they completely gain her trust over one action that they do. I'm not gonna tell you who. I keep on accidentally saying the pronoun, and I know that's just gonna give things away for people that do want to read the book. So at that point, I really appreciated that character development that was made for the person that we thought was gonna be the antagonist. That definitely was one of my favorite parts in the entire book. Once again, it ends off in a little bit of a weird spot, but I am going to consider it just the end of that chapter, and I think it ends really well because this is really the beginning of a problem that Piper has to figure out. We're gonna go in between the first climax that happens. There are kind of two climax areas that happen. There is a failure and a success. Once we get to chapter 17, honestly, I contemplate if this is a child appropriate book. Not because anything inappropriate happens, but like, it's hella intense, like super duper intense. I was feeling X-Men torture vibes. I feel like if I were to describe this book in two different contexts, I would say it's a mix of Little House on the Prairie and X-Men, which is a weird combination, but that's what this book is. What I liked about it was I think that because of this major failure that happens, it kind of gives Piper an opportunity to be more of a realist because she's extremely optimistic, and the character that is supposed to be supporting her is definitely a realist. She has an opportunity to kind of understand and balance herself out, but at the same time, she still keeps that good attitude. I think she did a really good job developing the story. I think this is when I was the most invested, was in between halfway and where the first climax part happens, and it's really sad. Like, it made me feel emotions, which I was not expecting with this book. I thought it would be a little bit more of a lighthearted, you know, adventure type of thing, but no, like, this stuff is scientifically intense. The ending made me very sad. Made me contemplate if this book was even worth reading later because I got upset. Not in a bad way, in a heartbroken way. This is where I feel like my initial thoughts were, wow. Like, everyone makes extreme personality or like character developments. There are a lot of characters in this story that are sub-characters that seem not important in the beginning, but then later kind of make their appearance. So it is a little bit hard to keep track of all of the kids, but I think that this was a really good opportunity for both Piper and her supporting character to learn things about themselves and to balance each other out and change for each other, and how their relationship grows because of that. Honestly, my favorite part was understanding the true antagonist. I feel like I have a really hard time doing that with antagonists in my book or antagonists in other books. I seem to be a very black and white person when it comes to choosing the bad guys and the good guys. Very few times and I'm like, oh, they're a gray area. They're like a normal person. Like, you're either really good or you are the worst. And I think that we should be a little bit more conscious of that. Like, what is the real reason that the antagonist in Lord of the Rings was so bad? Because I feel like now that I have lived the real world, there are very few people that are bad just to be bad. There's a reason. They had a traumatic childhood. They think that they are doing the right thing. And in this case, that is what happens with the true antagonist here, which I really like, because even though they're a terrible, awful person, like, there's no way that you can excuse the things that they did. You still sympathize with them, which I think is super powerful. Like, at this point, during the end, I would not change a thing. And the ending was bone chilling. It made a full circle effect, which I was not expecting it to. There's no way that anybody can expect the last moments of Piper and the true antagonist. Like, no one can guess it. And now we are finally at the end. My initial thoughts of this book when I first picked it up is I thought it would be cute. I heard some good things about it from my friends, but I wasn't expecting too much. What I really liked about this book was it was not as tropey as usually these types of like kid adventure stories are. I liked that it was a little bit different. Of course, you have the trope of these kids have powers. It's in a very interesting sort of scenario. It's almost like Xavier's Academy of Gifted Children or something like that, but it's almost like you put younger kids in that scenario that maybe aren't as powerful as X-Men, but they're still powerful, and it completely turns on them. My favorite part, honestly, I think the supporting character is my absolute favorite character, where you initially think they're the bad guy, but then they turn into like the best character ever. I love that character so much. Love sub characters. I am all about making your favorite character the supporting character. Like in Harry Potter, Luna Lovegood, my fave, my absolute favorite. And also Finnick in the Hunger Games. I usually never choose the main character as my favorite character. I'm usually really annoyed by the main character. I could change one thing. Once again, I think that a lot of sections are a little bit over detailed, and while I know that is kind of the type of genre and style that this author writes in, I could have done without knowing everybody's backstory, especially if the character wasn't really super important in that scenario and like there wasn't a reason that we knew that backstory rather than getting to know the character a little bit more. I thought the ending was very peaceful. It was interesting because I'm like, oh, there's not really much room for another adventure. This really seems like this is it, this is the end. But funny enough, there is in fact a sequel, so I'll have to get my hands on that soon. I'm gonna give it an A-. It wasn't my absolute favorite book, but I feel like a B is gonna be way too low of a score. I think that everyone should read this book. I think everyone will find it enjoyable and playful, but also at the same time, we'll see the value in the serious topics that are brought up. Definitely would recommend, definitely a book that I'm keeping on my bookshelf, and I'm really happy that was the first book that I was able to review, coming back to doing more booktube stuff. The next book that I am going to be planning on reviewing is going to be The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Yes, it is a Hunger Games edition. The main character is Snow. It's been an interesting journey. I'm still in the process of reading it, so maybe halfway through I'll be able to explain a little bit of the halfway point. But at this point, I kind of just want to finish it because it's taking me forever. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like these book reviews, make sure to hit that thumbs up and also subscribe. If you hit the bell notification, then you will know right when I come out with book reviews. Sayonara, you guys, and I will see you next time I finish a book.